Basic probability. So what is probability? Probability is the likelihood of a specific event or events taking place. And probability is all around us. When you're watching the weather, you've probably heard of the meteorologist talking about the probability of rain or snow. And baseball managers use probability to determine their lineups and what players to put in the game. Insurance companies use probability to determine their rates for the various types of insurance. So we're going to play a little game, and I'm going to shorten this up. And we're going to spin two coins. And of course, the coins have head and tail. I'm going to play against the cat and dog down here. And every time it lands on a head, then the dog gets a point, which he did just here. Every time it's a tail, the cat will get a point. And every time it's a head tail, I will get a point. First 1 to 3 wins. One more and I win. And I won. Now normally, if in the classroom, I would do this till 10. The first 1 to 10 tally marks would win. I'm just trying to speed things up a little bit. This game is rigged, as you will find out. And the majority of the time, whoever's head and tail will win. I have seen tail and tail win and head win, but the majority of the time, head and tail wins. Let's take a look and see why. Now this is a tree diagram, and we're going to take a look at all the possible things, all the possible outcomes that could have happened in that game we just played. Now this represents the first coin, and this represents the second coin. Now the first coin, it could have been a head. It could also, the second could have been a head. So first head, second head, head. It could have also been a head, then a tail. Now on the second coin, we could have had a tail, then a tail, or a tail, then a head. There were 4 possible outcomes in that game that we just played. Now there is a formula you can use for calculating basic probability. You take the numerator is the desired outcome. What is it that you want to happen? What do you desire? What's the outcome that you want to happen? And the denominator is the total number of outcomes there are. So in the game that we just played, there were 4 possible outcomes, right? 4 possible outcomes. So let's take a look. So this stands for probability. What was the probability of a head-head? So if the desired outcome was to get a head-head, there was only one. There was only one head-head out of 4. That person only had a 25% chance of winning each time we tossed the 2 coins. For the tail, same thing. The desired outcome, if you wanted a tail, there was only one. So the probability was 1 out of 4, or a 25% chance. Now, if the desired outcome was a head-tail, there were actually 2 of those, 2 out of 4. So every time that you played that, you had a 50% chance of winning. So the majority of the time, this person's going to win. Let's take a look at another example here. Well, first I wanted to mention this. All probability is between 0 and 1 or 0 and 100%. If the probability of something is 0, it cannot possibly happen. There's no way it can happen. If the probability of something is 1 or 100%, it has to happen. Now, generally with probability, it's somewhere in between. If it's greater than half, then it's likely that event will happen. If it's less than half, it's an unlikely event. It probably won't happen. And if it's exactly 1/2, it's not likely or unlikely. When you toss a coin, the probability of a head, it's 1 out of 2. It's 50%. So if you were only tossing 1 coin, it's not likely or unlikely that you would get a head. It's even. It's an even chance, 50-50. So if you look here at this weather forecast, this 20% chance of rain, it's unlikely it's going to rain on Monday. However, if you look at Sunday, there's a 70% chance of rain. It's probably going to rain on Sunday. It's highly likely that it will rain. All right, here we have a little spinner game. And if you counted all the segments on the spinner, there's actually 10 different things that it could land on. So let's look at the probability of each of these outcomes. So what would be the probability of you landing on a red? Well, the desired outcome is red, and there are 2 of them. How many total outcomes are there? There's 10. You have a 2 out of 10 chance of that happening, which would be 20%. So that's an unlikely event. Let's go ahead and spin and see what happens. It's unlikely to happen, and it didn't. How about a yellow? Now there are 3 yellows, so if your desired outcome is yellow, there are 3 yellows out of 10. You have a 30% chance. Now this is less than half. So let's go ahead and spin. It's probably not going to happen, and it didn't. There's a 70% chance it won't happen. How about a blue? Well, the desired outcome is blue, so there are 4 blue segments, 4 out of 10. There's a 40% chance that you'll land on a blue. Let's just find out what happens. Let me give it a good spin here. It did happen. Even though that was an unlikely event, it did happen. Now green, there's only 1 green. The desired outcome is green. You only have a 1 out of 10 chance of that happening. So if you spin this 10 times, it's only probably going to happen once, and it didn't happen there. Now how about purple? Well, you may have noticed there are no purple segments. So the desired outcome is purple. There aren't any. It's a 0 out of 10 chance. It can't happen. It's 0%. It cannot possibly happen. How about the probability of spinning a color? Well, they're all colors. So if the desired outcome is to spin a color, that's 10. It's 10 out of 10. It has to happen. The probability is 1. It's 10 out of 10, or 100%. Well, what about the probability of a blue or a green? Well, there's 4 blues, there's 1 green, so the desired outcome, there are 5 desired outcomes, 4 plus 1. That would be 50% chance, a 5 out of 10 chance. So that's not likely or unlikely. It's a 50% chance. It's 50-50. What about blue or yellow? Now blue, there are 4. Yellow, there are 3. So that's, you have a 7 out of 10 chance, 7 out of 10 probability that that'll happen, 70%. Well, let's just find out. It's likely that that will happen, and it did. I landed on yellow. That was very likely that that would happen. Let's take a look at a spinner, or I'm sorry, at a die. Now there are 6 sides on the die, so there are 6 possible things that could happen. You could get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a 6. Okay, so there are 6 different things that could happen. So all of these are going to be out of 6. All right, well, let's look at the first one. So the first one, what's the probability of rolling an odd number? Well, there are 3 odd numbers. So the desired outcome is an odd number. That's 3 out of 6. So that's 50-50. It's not likely or unlikely. Let's just find out what happens. So I got a 2. Didn't happen. How about an even number? Well, the even numbers are 2, 4, and 6. So if that's your desired outcome, there are 3 even numbers out of 6. Let's see what happens. And it did happen. What about the probability of rolling a 1 through 5? A 1 through 5, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, your desired outcome is any 5 of those numbers out of 6. Well, that's an 83% chance. That is highly likely that this will happen. Let's find out. And it did happen. We got a 5. How about a 1, 2, or a 4? So a 1, 2, or a 4, the desired outcome is 3 out of 6. You have a 50-50 shot. You got a 2, so it did occur. How about the probability of a 7? Well, there are no 7s. So it's 0 out of 6. It's a 0% chance. I'm not even going to roll it because it cannot happen. You cannot roll a 7. And the very last example, the probability of rolling a 6, oh, I'm sorry, a 1 through 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 desired outcomes. So the probability is 100% that that's going to happen. And it has to happen. So I rolled a 4. It did happen. So just remember, probability is from 0 to 100%. The numerator is the desired outcome. What do you want to happen? And the bottom number is the total possible number of outcomes. So that's all there is to basic probability.